So Yalimada to everyone from across Canada. Thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome to our next installation of our Discover Your Path webinar, specifically in early childhood development. We have a great line of panelists lined up, and we're really excited to have you joining us. My name is Natasha Wally. I'm the National Convener for Career Exploration and Guidance. It is my pleasure to have you all today and to be working with you through the evening. Next slide, please. So before I start, I would like to let you know that there is a question answer box in the panel below. So feel free at any point to drop in any questions that you have. You can direct it towards a speaker or have it open to any of the speakers, and we will make sure that we get the questions answered before you leave. In case we're not able to answer your question in today's session, we will also be sure to email you with the proper answer. So don't be shy. We have a great line of experts, and they'd be more than happy to answer any specific questions that you have. Next slide. Okay, so before we begin, I'm going to be doing this twice, and my ECD panelists will agree that sometimes repetition helps a lot in remembering critical information. So volunteering is an excellent way of gaining skills as well as exploring a career, and we're so lucky to have so many volunteering opportunities within our community. One such opportunity is through the SEED team, so the Supportive Environments and Experiences for Development team. They're national, and they're always looking for volunteers from across Canada. If you're interested in volunteering with them, please copy the link that's on these slides. The slides will also be posted, and this slide will also be, you'll see it towards the end as well in case you didn't catch it. But please feel free to copy and paste the link that's on the slide, or even put it in the chat. We'll be putting it in the chat at some point, and visit that website to see how you can get involved and maybe learn a little bit more about ECD through actually doing in our community and giving back. Thanks, Arzu. Next slide, please. Okay, so without further ado, it's on to the experts, not on to me. So I'm really proud to introduce you to our moderator for today, Arzu. Arzu has completed her master's in early childhood education from India, and since then she's been working as an early childhood educator. She was working with ITHRIB India for the past 3 years as the head of a department of early childhood education development. Apart from that, she was an active teacher trainer, working as a visiting faculty for SNDT Women's University and Safai Teacher Training Institute. Her role was to train new teachers and get them ready to be successful early childhood educators. She has experience working as a curriculum and resource developer for various preschools across the world. Now she is a proud owner of Enriching Early Learning, a theme-based website targeting blogs and early childhood education resources for teachers and parents dealing with children of 0 to 6 years old. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce our moderator, Arzu.
Thank you, Natasha. Welcome, Jamaat. Yali Madad, everyone. So without further ado, we are going to start with our questions with our panelists. So I'm going to introduce each panelist one after the other, and we are going to begin with Shireen. I would like you to welcome to the webinar, and if you can quickly introduce yourself.
Yes, absolutely. Yalimadat, everyone. Thank you for having me on this webinar tonight. I'm thrilled to be here. So my name is Shireen. I am originally from Vancouver. I moved here 5 years ago for school, taking the child development program. I've been in the field for about 12 to 13 years, but I've just kind of educated myself and just gone further. And I really like it here in Toronto. And yeah. Thank you for having me.
Amazing. So are you ready, Shireen?
I'm ready.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. So we'll begin with the very first question. As a fairly new graduate from child development, as you just mentioned, what about child education or early childhood education did you find interesting?
Yeah, so the program was amazing by far. I felt like there was more growth in the education. So there was more room to grow as a teacher and, you know, the constant learning type deal. I also felt, you know, there's more open doors. You can go travel. You know, I actually had the opportunity to go to Uganda and teach in a school, you know, go back to, you know, where my family and where our history was from. And it was quite the experience. So I felt like this program really pushed that along the way. And then in a sense of being more professional about yourself, about your education, the education you have in front of you, or even with you, right? I felt that understanding or how to talk to parents about talking to parents about their child or their child's development, how they're doing, what ways and tips and tricks you can use to make it feel like it's not overwhelming for them, right? Even talking to children and the staff and the people around you and the community around you. I also understood that every child is the same, but they're different in their own development. And you don't necessarily get to know that from the start. It's a gradual kind of thing. And I definitely thought that that was, you know, a really important aspect in child development. And another part was the social media aspect. I had the opportunity to take a social media class, learn about, you know, being professional, being about your brand, putting it out there, and just getting to show that you are a teacher and this is what you do.
Amazing. So this is so good. So if you're saying you had the social media aspect to it, so can you tell us how did you move from ECE to being a social media producer at your previous employment?
Yeah, absolutely. So that was an experience as well. So I didn't necessarily, I would say it's not really, it's like a sub job, right? So because I had the experience working in ECE, it was very difficult to try and do both. I think if you're wanting to do the social media aspect of things, you have to be a little bit more, okay, what am I doing exactly? Am I doing the ECE part? Like, am I still being in the ECE room, in the classroom, or am I more focusing on the social media, the Instagram, you know, putting the workplace out there, their brand out there? Really, what am I doing? So it was a very hard to kind of multitask between the two because there's a lot of shortages, and then of course through the pandemic it was quite difficult, but otherwise it was still a learning experience, right? Everything that you do is a learning experience. So
absolutely. So what do you think a current student thinking about getting certified should be doing or thinking about?
Yeah, absolutely. Volunteer. You know, volunteer is hugely in our community. Volunteer as much as you can. Do the SEED program. Really get to know your traits in the field, right? And I feel like SEED really helps with that. It becomes more professional to you and to the parents as well. And then educate yourself, even after graduation, right? Just educate. Know how to get your license, what you need to do, how long it takes, all of those questions that you have in your head, ask those, right? Ask more questions. And I think that will really help you find workshops or find like a path that you're looking for, that you want to go into, and find ways to do that.
Perfect. I think this should be a great insight for Jamaat. Thank you so much, Shireen.
Shireen, before you go,
welcome.
I have a quick question from the audience, and I thought we might as well ask it now about your educational background. If you don't mind just elaborating on that just a little bit, where you got your qualifications from.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got my early child education in Vancouver. So I got the certificate of ECE. I also have my citation in infant toddler. I have my diploma in special needs, all from Vancouver. And then I moved here and I got my child development bachelor's degree. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Shireen.
Thank you.
The next panelist is Alia Thavar. Hi, Alia. Welcome to the webinar. Thank you for being here. If you can give
so
your
much.
quick introduction to the Jamaat.
Sure. Yes. Yalimad, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I'm very humbled and excited to be able to share my experience with you. So I am a early childhood assistant instructor at a private college here in Milton. Previous to that, I worked at the IAS as the early childhood development coordinator, developing curriculum for the early years. Previous to that, I worked with newcomer families from all across the world. And I have worked in different non-for-profit centers, focusing on the infant, toddler, and preschool age groups. I've also developed curricular guides for a range of institutions like the Aga Khan Museum in Toronto, Balanand, which is an orphanage in Mumbai, India, and Woodside Special Care Center in Cape Town. And then within the Ismaili community, I've been involved in the pre-primary program in Ontario and the storytelling program.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Alia. Are you ready for the questions?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so there we go. For the last few years, you have actually been working in the industry, but not directly as an ECD person, but more as an instructor or coordinator. So can you tell Jamaat more about that?
Yeah, so more of my goal now is the administrative aspect of ECD. So I might not be technically in the field, but I'm kind of sharing my knowledge to students right now as an instructor. So my main goal is to cultivate their passion for the field. And there are so many things that are emerging now that I love to share to my students. Like last week, there was a webinar about seeing outdoor play in a very new light. So instead of, just the bikes and maybe climbing or whatever they might do, it's showing them the beauty of nature, or seeing, building community around those spaces that can really share stories. And that's the kind of excitement that gets me up every morning and be able to share that passion with my students. And since going online, I mean, it's been really exciting because there's so many new interactive tools that we can use, such as Nearpod, such as Padlet, which is very engaging to my students, especially if you're teaching them about theory. So these are really fun and interactive ways that they can get into the material and they can actually absorb it better than just having them on slides. And, right now, I think the only struggle I think that we're all facing is that a lot of my students are older students, so they have children or they have elderly parents at home. So it's trying to help support them as we're kind of learning together, I would say. But sometimes it's been very, very difficult for me to share that information with them. But they seem to be enjoying the field, and you can see their excitement, in field practicums, for example. And then as the coordinator, so I was responsible for developing a holistic curriculum. So imagine Talim, but it's from birth to 6 for the global Jamaat. And it was, so I developed a draft framework, but it was very extensive. It was about 200 pages that would be able to be used for the global Jamaat. Similar to Talim, so it highlights the developmental domains, but it also incorporates, moral education, religious education, and arts and aesthetics. So it was really comprehensive curriculum framework that would benefit the Jamaat, I think, in the long run. And, one of the bigger things was learning about all of these different cultural nuances and the realities of developing something so big with our Jamaat. Each region has so many different complexities, whether it's language barriers, whether it's access to resources, whether it's, different type, parental structures are a lot different in each region. So it really, really kind of really opened my eyes and broadened my perspective of early childhood development.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So you kind of covered a lot about what you were doing back in UK with IIS, but would you like to kind of add a little more and tell us what were your main duties and skills that were required in this profile that you were having back then?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So the main goal, or one of my main responsibilities, was developing this broad EC, what we called it early childhood education integrated curriculum framework. I know it's very long. So that was the big chunk of my role. So we broke it down into 2 stages because we developed one draft framework and we sent it for review just to make sure that we were on the right track. And then the second time we did this process, it was so much more complex because we also had, the images, we had the pictures, we had everything in this nicely bound framework that was like this thick. And that was such a big milestone for the IIS to develop something like this. But to get to that point, we had to evaluate and review different curriculum. I had to understand what's actually happening on the ground because, there's so many rich ideas, from all across the globe that we can incorporate. And there's so many best practices, right? Instead of creating something new, the whole idea was to kind of utilize some of these best practices and develop it further into our curriculum. And the exciting part about that is I also was able to coordinate a ECD workshop, and there were people from all across the globe that were here at the IIS, talking and sharing their ideas and sharing their best practices. Like we had people share their ideas about songs and music and storytelling from Tajikistan, for example. And it was such a great experience because we never realized how much was happening on the ground, right? And the good thing is that we had people from both ITHRB and Education Board attend, plus AKDN representatives. So it made the dialogue really, really rich. Yes, so to be able to kind of do something like this in terms of some of the skills, you have to be a really good communicator. And you have to understand that with curriculum development, it's a very iterative process. So there's going to be revision after revision after revision, and you have to be okay with that. But you still have to be able to, push yourself and think deeper, right? Look at it from a different perspective. I think that's so important to have. You have to be creative and innovative. Look at what's out there, but see if you can stretch that further, right? I think that's so important that you don't lose your creativity through this process. I think you have to be very analytical, right? Especially when you're examining and you're looking at different ideas, I think it's so, so important to have those skills. And I would say stay positive. Sometimes you feel like, if one idea gets shut down, you can kind of think of other ideas, right? Be open to all of the different possibilities out there because it is very, very difficult work. This is like a 24-hour type of job, right? 24 hours, 7 days a week, right? So you have to make sure that you are able to do that type of work. Yeah.
Absolutely. This sounds really interesting. So what are some pros and cons of having an international experience on your resume? You have any advice that you would like to share about someone who would like to go abroad and continue their work in the area of early childhood education?
Yeah, I would say if you have the opportunity, go. Maybe not right now because of COVID, but I would say go because there's so much more potential for career advancement, and especially if you are working globally or if you have an opportunity to work globally, you're connected now to a bigger audience. Your perspectives will change drastically. And I think that you learn so much more about yourself. You learn about independence. You learn about how to be resilient, especially when things don't work out. But it is such a good opportunity to go abroad, right? Because you learn so much more about yourself, but you learn so much, and you develop your own skill sets, right? As you go through whatever career that you're kind of going through. But if within the ECD, you learn so much about curriculum development that you won't necessarily get in Canada. And And some of the cons, I think, is some of the hidden costs kind of associated with it in terms of visas, in terms of cost of living, depending on where you are, and leaving your friends and family. And if you're going to somewhere that's not in a Western country, you might experience some culture shock. Sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Alia. Our next panelist is Shairos. Shairos, can we have you on camera? Hi, welcome.
Yeah, welcome. Thank you.
Can you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Shairos. I am from Toronto, Ontario. I have a background in nursing. I am a registered nurse in Ontario, and I've been practicing for some years now. I think it's been 12 years with my designation. Not sure if it's boredom or the shift work that got to me, because my husband also does shift work. And the lifestyle, the shift work, the not being able to get to Kane, trying to multitask, the seva, the helping the parents, raising 2 children. I decided to do a little bit of a switch and listen to House Moms for Moms and put a bit more emphasis on early childhood education for my 2 children. I saw a lot of, I guess, flaws or shortcomings where my children go to school. They are privately educated at a private school. I saw a lot of ways to be able to enhance their education, to make it more culturally specific and sensitive, and also to look at the child as a whole. So not just the educational component, the cognitive, but the physical, the spiritual, the nutritional, and to kind of lead a lifestyle that I'm able to do all the things that I love.
Absolutely.
So there came along opening up a Montessori school, probably at the worst time ever, while every business is closing down and shutting down, and people are asked to stay home. I decided to open up a school. So it's been quite interesting.
Amazing. We are looking forward to have the question answer with you. Okay, so the first question, you have your background in nursing, as you just said, and now you own a childcare center. So please tell us why you made this transition. You already said a lot about it, but if in case you want to add something more to this.
So I am a nurse. I love nursing on both ends of the spectrum. I have nursed labor and delivery. I've done a little bit in peds. I have spent a lot of time in oncology, and then probably one of my favorites is the geriatrics, so working with elderly. It's always nice, but it's always nice also working with our own culture, right? So being able to, help those individuals in Kane, able to go to the nursing home and give some advice. I've actually had the pleasure of managing a nursing home and having Ismailis just come to the nursing home because I was managing it. But again, I said to you, the hours were very difficult. I wasn't able to have a balance between work and my social and my family life. And my husband did shift work. So I tried to take nursing and try to be a little bit out of the box and see how else I can incorporate some of my knowledge and my experience and my passion. So there came along the thought of quite possibly opening up a school. It was a long and tedious process. However, we did make it. I actually own a school called Arundel Early Education. It's a Montessori and childcare in the heart of Mississauga. It's in terms of childhood education, it's a triple blend approach, a tier approach of a Montessori, play-based, and Reggio. So I take some aspects that I've read about through practice, through readings, and hiring amazing staff to help me run a center of 119 students. And my children are my passion for this. I don't think I've ever left nursing. I've just taken nursing and brought it into the school. We do, give parents advice for early breastfeeding clinics. We do first aiding for children. We network with community agencies like SLPs and occupational therapists to help children to kind of get that more holistic approach.
Perfect. So what were your challenges or opportunities of owning your own business in early childhood?
Wow. Again, the biggest challenge in opening a brand new school would be the pandemic. Hard enough opening up a business, first timer, as a nurse, it's the financial aspect is a burden. But then again, having to do it during a time of COVID made it very difficult. We had to ensure that we are not only now aligning our policies and procedures with the Ministry of Education in order to get our licensing, but you're also dealing with the public health unit. You're also working with the Ministry of Environment and I guess the city of Mississauga, in which we are. So that was very challenging, trying to get everyone to network together and work together, especially when everybody's working from home. And you have deadlines, and unfortunately you're working at someone else's time frame, right? So that was the difficult part. Another challenge for childcare at this point, sorry, what have been the challenges and opportunities? Another big challenge for us right now as a center is seeing the difference in cognitive capacity between children who are pre-COVID and not COVID babies. So right now we're seeing a lot of children who are being registered who are aphasic. So in nursing terms, that's individuals who are having a difficult time speaking. And unfortunately, with lack of assessment, we don't know if there's a cognitive development for that child. Do they have any learning disabilities? Is there something that we need to worry about, such as autism? Or is it just because, it's a manifestation or a symptom of being isolated, parents working from home, and the child not getting enough social interaction with families? So a lot of children coming to the center, ages 2, 2.5, even 3, with very limited vocabulary. So trying to work with the region and network with them to see if we can get these children assessed so we can start early primary prevention and early intervention and therapy for these children. And you know what, it's probably a blessing in opening during the pandemic is the staff that we've hired. They've had to be a bit more vigilant in terms of infection control, all the training, wearing the PPE. So it's been really nice. Their documentation has had to exceed the levels because that's the way in which we communicate with parents. So I find that once this pandemic is over, the staff that we've hired, they have a high work ethic. And it's just going to be the standard way of going forward, So they've had to learn how to use more technology. They've had to learn how to report and document without papers, communicate with parents via telephone call. So it's had its challenges, but it's also been very beneficial in some regards.
Perfect. In the interest of time, would you like to give a couple of advices for those who would like to start their own business in early childhood education?
Be prepared to work. I thought nursing was hard and I thought business ownership would have been easy. I was completely mistaken. Be prepared for your 10 hours, be prepared for your 12s, be prepared for your 18-hour days, because it's good. It's what it takes. It's hard work. It's even harder than you probably thought. You have to work at building your capacity and your patience. You need a lot of patience. But more so, you need a lot of faith. Everything happens, you take 2 steps forward, and then you know what? The next day you've taken 10 steps back. And for me, my spirituality and my faith has increased tenfold because something's happening to me at the point, and I don't know why. I've maybe lost the staff, or I don't know why. The COVID numbers are rising, and then a couple of weeks later, in hindsight, you're like, oh, so it was a blessing. Somebody was looking after me. So have a lot of patience. It's never going to be easy, but if you keep your goals in mind and your why as to why you're doing it and the benefits, for me, the benefits are, at the end, it benefits my family. I'm able to help our Somali community who are new immigrants to the area. I can help them out with a bit more tuition. We still have a lot of space in the area that hopefully one day we can, use for BUI or whatever you need. So there's a lot of sort of whys, and you have to be reminded that, it's going to take a lot of hard work, but inshallah, the fruits will bear very soon.
Perfect.
And lastly, keep pushing forward. If you need help, ask for help. There's always somebody there to guide you and support you. And go to Kane for faith.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Charles. It was really insightful. Thank you for sharing your experiences. Okay, the last panelist that we have is Nahid Mukhi. Nahid, can we have you on the camera, please? Hi. Welcome, Nahid. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And it's so great to be a part of this incredible panel of wonderful women. So thank you so much. My name is Nahid Muki, and I'm the pre-primary lead for ITROP Canada. So essentially, I'm responsible for the oversight of the academic as well as administrative work of the ITROP Canada's early years program. In addition to that, I also work with international DJ institutions. So my work is more curriculum designing as well as designing of teacher materials for countries like Russia, Syria, Afghanistan, and Tajikistan, and working with the Department of Jamati institutions. Before that, I was working with the United Way and also on the grassroots level with the newcomer families and children.
Thank you so much, Nahid. Are you ready for the questions?
Absolutely.
Okay, there we go. So you have so much of experience at higher levels in ECD, including ITREB and AKDM. So from your experience, what makes a good ECD and why should someone consider this as a good career option?
So we know that early years are the building blocks, the crucial window of opportunity to make a child's life. So I think the entire idea of this field is to have the maximum amount of impact in that small window of opportunity that have. And I think that's one of the reasons that this is a great opportunity, because you're doing impact at such a microcosmic level of a child, of a family, and then at a larger level of the community and the country itself. So I think it's a very rewarding field in terms of the impact it can have, a lifelong impact. In addition to that, this field, and I think we can see from the various backgrounds of our panelists, it can lead to multiple and diverse pathways. So with an early childhood background, you can end up in research, you can end up in teaching. One of our panelists is teaching at a college level. So you can end up teaching diplomas, you can end up teaching in universities. You can also do curriculum development. You can end up having your sort of own hours as a consultant and program management of many of the programs out there. Or you could be a business owner, like one of our panelists. So the wide variety of pathways that this field can lead into is one of the reasons that it could be a great career opportunity. In terms of the skills and experience, I think this is a relatively new field, and there's a lot of research coming into our hands. So I think as an early childhood development expert, you have to have one ground very much in the evidence-based practices and the research. Also, when you're working with young children is itself a very diverse group, and you have children of different temperaments, different nature, children of different personalities. So I think when you're working with children, you need that sort of skill set to be adaptable, to be patient, and also you're working with not just the children themselves, but their caregivers, the families, the parents, the community, the neighborhood. So I think all those soft skills of empathy, of having patience, and showing up work day after day with a positive attitude and just taking it in and enjoying your work is very crucial when you're working at this in early childhood development.
I so much agree with you. So the next question, how is the industry changing in terms of research and trends?
Absolutely. So I think COVID was a big lesson for all of us. And one of the things with the closure of childcare centers, with children being at home, we realized the crucial and the fundamental importance of the parent and the parent and child relationship. And I think that's one thing that we learned, that as early years people, were not just emphasizing on the young children, but also empowering parents and showing them the importance of the early years and empowering them with the best practices to work with their kids. Another thing that we noticed as a trend was, and this was something that while we were developing programs at ITROP Canada for the Jamaat across Canada, was the need for low cost, no cost resources. In order to implement these programs, we realized that many of the families don't have access, because of the pandemic, many of the families do not have access to materials, right? Stationery and a lot of the things that you need for running activities. And therefore we started developing low cost, no cost resources and activities for children to just pick up, and you don't need expensive tech, or you don't need big toys to enhance those skills of early years. So that's another lesson. And I think I picked up this lesson when I was doing research in East Africa in the Madrasa program, where the children were learning life skills without any sort of major toys or materials out there. So that's another thing that's coming up in the field, especially because of the pandemic. And then lastly, I think honoring the child's home language, home culture. We see now there's an emerging trend in the field that what a child's bringing from the home, whether it's the language of the child, whether the language of the parents, or the native culture of the child, is supposed to be enhanced, harnessed, and honored. And time again, this is becoming important, because we know as children are growing up, and we know in the youth itself, we see this sort of this identity issues and lack of self-confidence. And in early, what better time to promote home culture, home language than in the early years? So these are some of the things that we see happening quite rapidly in the field itself.
I think I've observed the same. So back in India, when I was working with ITREB India, I think we saw the same trends. Low cost resources. So our activities also got developed for the Jamaat so that they can be implemented with ease at home. So I think it was everywhere. Thank you. So you have a master's degree in science, I think specifically in child development and education from Oxford. Is getting a graduate degree important for success in this industry?
Absolutely. As I mentioned, I think it opens up a lot of diverse and multiple opportunities and pathways. So that's one thing. The another thing is, I think with a graduate degree, you're able to teach in colleges and universities. Also have that sort of when you're producing knowledge, that gives you kind of that credibility out there to speak about the field, but also to mobilize the knowledge itself and produce knowledge in terms of research. In addition to that, when you are part of a university, you have colleagues. So for example, my colleagues are across the world, they're working in the field itself. So you have that network of people that you can rely on, you can learn what's happening in the early years in different countries. So that's, for me, many a times when I want to bounce back ideas, these are a team of colleagues that I refer to, call up and ask, okay, what's happening in your field? How has COVID impacted on your field? And lastly, I think you need the master's degree to pursue further education, especially if you're going into a PhD program or an EdD program, or if you want to switch fields and go towards working in psychology or clinical practices. So I think that's where a graduate degree really comes into place.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Nahid, for all your wonderful insights. So Jamaat, we have covered all our 4 panelists. If you have any questions, please feel free to add them in the question and answer session. And we are going to now move to the roundtable discussion. And I would like all our panelists to just turn on their cameras and feel free to answer these questions if you feel so, okay? So the number 1 question is, how is technology changing the current industry that we are talking about?
I think it's changing a lot. You know, it's changing in any business that you're into, but I think definitely for education itself. I know back in the day when I was, in a childcare center, we didn't have technology. We had to pen and paper, jot down everything of what the child was doing, what their washroom was like, and then just, explaining to the parents, oh, they had a great day today, and, this is what they did. Whereas now you're using technology to connect with them a little bit more in a deeper sector, right? You're able to take pictures of them, take videos of them, sending it to them, on different apps that different centers use. And I feel like that is really kind of changing the aspect of childcare. It's more letting the parents know that, I am okay with sending my child 8-9 hours a day to a childcare center where they're learning things, right? And it's great because they see that, but they also see that through the technology aspect of things.
Thank you, Sherry.
I think in addition to that, it sparked this whole debate of screen time guidelines. Okay, what's right for the child? What's not right for the child? How much screen time at what age? So I think this has started now, this talk about if you're developing virtual programming for the kids because everything else is not available. How do you go about that? Another thing is the involvement of parents more so than ever, because many of the parents are working from home. For example, my husband is working from home, so now he knows more what's happening with my child's life, much more involved, see the early years impact right away. So I think parents are much more involved than ever because they're working right in the premises where the child is many a times doing the virtual programming.
Perfect.
Wait, can I just add one more thing?
Sure.
I just want to add in terms of what Nayad said. Yes, I agree in terms of screen time. It's so important, but I think that we have to make sure that there are certain security measures in place because there are a lot of harmful resources online. And if a child gets access to it, it can be very harmful for them and for people around them, right? So depending. So I think that we have to make sure that we have safeguards in place when we're talking about technology to parents or to educators, because you know, with all of the good things about technology, I think we just have to be mindful. Yeah, that was it.
Absolutely. And I think when it comes to technology in early years, I think you, as Nahid and other panelists had mentioned, it's very important. What age, how much screen time, you know, and who is going to tell parents all of this? It's the experts in the field who is going to do all the research and all the, findings, and they are going to help parents understand. So we definitely need a lot of experts in the field. So I hope the Jamaat today gets inspired from our panelists. Okay, moving to question number 2. What is something you wish you knew at the start of your career? Anybody would like to jump in?
Okay, I can go first.
Sure.
I wish someone told me right in the beginning was to think broader, to think globally. You know, I was always told when I was learning, or when I was in my program for early childhood, their only career pathway was just to be on the ground, right? And I think that was so like instead of looking bigger, they just kind of squashed all your dreams and said you're going to be in the field forever. And I really, really wish that someone told me that, you know, there are so many different global opportunities for you to, you know, apply for, right? There's so many different perspectives of early childhood that you could learn or that you can grow. And I really, really wish that someone had told me that right from the get-go, because I think, you know, my trajectory might have been a little bit different. But yes, because I think as Nayad mentioned in hers, right, there's so, like in her presentation, there's so many different options in the fields, right? Like you can even do quality assurance, you can do policy, you can do play therapy, you could do, you know, training. So there's so many different avenues. And I wish someone told me that ahead of time.
Perfect. Anybody else? Yes.
I'll jump in.
Sure.
I kind of wish that, I guess my parents' mentality, I don't know, or maybe the Indian mentality, I don't know, is to go to school and get these degrees and put them on the walls because they look so nice. I kind of wish that, you know, the mentality growing up for my parents wasn't more go to school and go get a good job, right? Go work for somebody. That's one mentality that, you know what, it was really hard for me to dispel. You know, I picked up a profession that I thought would be honorable. Nursing is 100% honorable. And there's so much room for seva. But, you know, I wish I had the courage to say, Mom, Dad, you know, this is what I have. But I needed something a bit more outside of mainstream. Both my husband and I both chose, you know, governmental jobs that are service. But it's hard. It's hard in this lifestyle to lead the life that we want, that the lifestyle that most of us, you know, in our community are blessed to have. So I wish I would have been told, think outside the box. It doesn't just have to be nursing, or it doesn't just have to be consulting, or it doesn't just have to be, you know, NP or doctor. So late in my game, I realized that, you know what, I personally, for my family and for my lifestyle, I need to honestly, like, it's great to do what you love. I love it. But at the end of the day, you may honestly lose passion for it if you have financial pressures. If you have financial pressures or deadlines that you cannot meet, it's hard to have that passion. So for me, I had to take the passion and make it to something that would secure the lifestyle for me and my family. So, you know, here comes the business, and you know what? It's thinking outside the box. Who would have thought? A nurse, Montessori school. And you know what? I took a chance. And by God's grace, my chance worked. Like, which mother doesn't want to drop off their kid during a pandemic to a childcare? Like, if they're choked, you have a nurse. These days, 1 in 3, 1 in 4 children are walking with EpiPens. And if it's not an EpiPen, there's some kind of learning disability. There's seizures. It's so much to be had. I feel like sometimes I'm in a hospital, you know, so I wish the mentality wasn't go to school and get that mainstream job. For me, like I'm doing what I love, but I had to take it a step further, you know, and business is always great. You get to help others, you get to be independent, but you also don't always have to be at work to be seeing your gains, right? If you have a strong team behind you who follows your vision and doesn't take shortcuts, it's actually really great. And there's a lot of room for Seva to help to help, you know, the community around you. And for me, finally, I was that late bloomer. Finally, I found something that I love and something that I can help a lot of people with and have a great impact. So it doesn't have to be nursing. It doesn't have to be policing. It doesn't have to be lawyer. It could be a fusion of so many things. That's kind of what I wanted to share.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Oh,
Yes, Shari, go
yeah,
ahead.
okay. Thank you. I actually want to go on both of the, you know, Alia and what Shira also said as well. I think one of the biggest things I wish and I wouldn't change it any other way, but if I had that opportunity to go back and find out, you know, what is, my biggest thing would be, what is ECE? What is it all about? Before I get into this program or before I go into this childcare center, what really is ECE? Are there opportunities, not just, you know, being on the ground, like Alia said? It's strictly, where can we go from there? What is the pay like? You know, it's not, sometimes it's not, it's a very gray area, you know, sometimes, right? So what is the pay area? Where do I need to get that higher pay? Or where do I need to go to get that more experience? Or, you know, what else is around there that I could do in order to go forth in my career? But yet again, I would not change what I'm doing right now, because the passion that I have for children and the education department is great. And so I would say, if you're going forward for the students out there, I would say ask those questions, because you really want to know, right? You want to really make sure that you're making the decision, and it may not be the right decision, but you want to just find out, you want to inquire and that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
Okay, perfect. I think that's it for today. That's it for the roundtable discussion. I would like to hand it over to Natasha for taking up the question and answers, if there are any. Okay.
Thank you so much. So before we get into the Q&A, we do have some great Q&A. I just wanted to remind everyone that, and there were some questions around this, if you're thinking about becoming an ECE, or you want to go into ECD and you want to explore a little bit, volunteer. I think it was our first panelist, Shireen, who said, you know what, volunteer if you're not sure if this is what you want to do. It's a great way to get your feet wet, to really understand what industry might be, or one of the pathways in the industry might be. And again, we're so lucky to have a fantastic community where we have all these really meaningful work, volunteer opportunities. And again, you can do this from anywhere in Canada. So please visit that website. I did put it in the chat earlier, but please visit the SEED website if you want more information on how you can be a volunteer within our team at the Ed Board. So thank you so much. So on to the question and answer. We have some great questions. questions. So maybe to start, and part of the reason why we do these panels and get such diverse panelists is, as you saw, everybody has a different pathway. Maybe everybody intended when they started to get into the field was be at the ground, like Alia said. Maybe that was the only option they thought that they had. And as they kind of went along, they explored, they were curious, and they realized that there were other, I guess, veins that they could do. So I guess one of the questions is, after pursuing ECE, how can you step ahead and get into being an instructor or an administrative role? Probably doesn't happen overnight. So a few of you guys who have kind of done that, if you can kind of respond to that, what helped you be successful in moving to the next step?
From an employer standpoint, right now in the region of Peel, they recommend 3 years of work experience. So as an ECE, early childhood educator, they recommend, it could be a diploma, it could be your ECE degree. Either which way, doesn't really matter. 3 years working experience. And from there, you are basically able to apply for a supervisory position in any kind of business, whether it be private or public. And thereafter, it's very simple, as the employer would just submit your resume, a little blurb about yourself, basically to the Ministry of Education to see whether or not they feel that you'd be able to handle a center of that capacity. And if so, you know what, that's your best opportunity is learning on the job. There's nothing that you can actually read a book, or, you're only going to learn your lessons by failing and making mistakes. And once you've made that mistake, I assure you, you won't make it again. So it's not really hard. You just need someone to help you get that foot in the door. 3 years, diploma, apply, get your foot in the door, and just go with it. Put your hours in, and you can be a supervisor. And sometimes if you're able to handle, you can supervise a whole center, 120 students. And sometimes the center has a bit more complex needs and you'd have 2 supervisors. But you know what, that diploma is a great starting point.
I think it seems to be the baseline. And as you get experience and you prove yourself and you kind of stand out, if that's where your strengths kind of lie, it seems like employers can quickly see that and then go from there. Thanks, Giles.
In addition to that, expose yourself to a diverse population of kids, so newcomer families, international audience out there. With the virtual realm, it's much more easier. So I think the more you get involved in the field, the amount of experience that you get, I think it helps with the successful and having sort of your own niche within the sector because it's so diverse.
And I was going to say, yeah, even if you have like leadership opportunities or anything like that, that will help you. If you want to be an instructor, if you have adult learning degree or certificate, will also help you get a job. I think you need 5 years of experience to be an instructor in private colleges or community colleges, and then a master's or PhD to teach at the more well-known colleges and universities.
Great. Perfect. Very clear, I guess, steps that people can take. So that's great to know. And I would add, just to be curious and to kind of get your feet wherever you can in different committees or different volunteer experiences, just to get that leadership experience. Thanks so much for that. I guess the next question that's on here, there was someone asking really about international opportunities. And Alia, you mentioned how exciting that could be. And if you're toying around with that idea to, maybe take the plunge, knowing the pros and cons. Nahid and Alia, you both have had international experiences, and I don't know if the other panelists have as well, but is there anything specific that helped you get started in that? If someone's thinking about going international, what do they do? Where do they start?
Now, do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
I'll go first. I think for me, it started with TKN. So I think TKN was the first, my entire AKDN curriculum development started with an AKDN where I was approached for a month assignment. It turned into a year, it turned into consultancy. So I would recommend that because the TKN's part of our institutions gets TKN, and it exposes you to international opportunities. So put the word out there as well that you're taking in, you're available for a volunteer opportunity, and I think it works out. So for me, it was TKN.
So for me, it was completely different. I did get my volunteer experience, international experience from TKN, but I was Googling online and I was looking for international experiences within the sector. So So my first one in South Africa, I didn't have a lot of experience, but you just have to fund these trips by yourself. So just be aware of the cost and that you'll have to probably fundraise. But I'm telling you that it will change your life, because the children that you meet and the type of environment that you're in is it's a game changer. It's a game changer for me, and that really kind of made me want to pursue early childhood, but within the international sector, right? Because you want to do so much to help support the children and the families.
I'm sure I can see from your eyes the spark, right? And how that experience probably still has stayed with you, Alia. So thanks for sharing, both of you. I guess the last question, since I'm mindful of time, and I promised the panelists that this hour is going to go by so fast, and boy, does it ever. So really quickly, maybe just in one sentence, there's a very broad question here about what's ECE like. And so if you can describe it, maybe either your experience or the environment in a sentence, based on your experience, how would you describe being in ECE or working in ECD, early childhood development?
I will say it's parenting, nursing, caregiving, feeding, PSWing, all in one. It is one of the hardest jobs I've ever seen. Kudos to those individuals who are able to do it when you add a child with a developmental disability. It is honestly so difficult. You need to have a very strong mindset in order to do it. And then you go home to your own kids. It's a hard job. It's a very hard job. And, hopefully as time goes by, the wage will increase and make it a bit more enticing and rewarding.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Shiras. But I guess there are people out there that don't want an office job at a desk, can never see themselves doing that and having the same day over and over again. So I imagine why it's so attractive to some people. Thanks for sharing that, Shiras. Interesting. Anybody else?
I'll use the analogy of a seed. So it's sowing a seed, basically, watering it every day, nurturing it with love and care, and being very patient to see what kind of plant or a tree it would grow into. So
I like that. Alia or Shari?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
So I would say for me, it's all about ensuring that every child has access to the same type of care, and that every child reaches their developmental trajectory or their milestones, whatever that may be. And for me, that's the big thing, right? To ensure that every child meets their development and, has equitable access to all of these resources. So for me, that's what ECE or ECD means.
For me, I think it's a rewarding experience. It is definitely a difficult and hard job, but it's rewarding at the end because the children are looking up to you. You are their role model. You are there to teach them about themselves and to guide them with their parents. And I feel like even though it's hard and difficult, and there's a lot of resources you have to use in order to teach the children, it's still a rewarding experience because of the smile on their face. What they're learning in the classroom, what they're learning in school makes you feel so good about yourself. I find the image of a child is as a whole, but it's the inside that you don't really see. And until you see it after the learning, it's like, I did that, you feel good about it. You feel like you made a difference in a child's life, and that child made a difference in the community, in the world around they seek, things like that. So I really truly feel that ECE, it's a tough job, and we definitely need people. But I feel it's also a very rewarding experience as well.
Wow, what a great way to summarize that, and what a great way to end our session. Right on time as well. So I just wanted to thank each of you, Shireen, Shiros, Nahid, Alia, and Arzu. You guys have been so inspirational. And like I said, we have these webinars with these experts in our Jamaat. We're so lucky to have such talented and passionate individuals and people who are so willing to share with coming generations. Clearly, you guys want to do that based on the work that you've chosen in the line of work. We see how important this area specifically is to Maulana Hazrimam's heart. And we're so proud of you guys for doing the work that you do every day and bringing those ethics and values of our faith into your workplaces. And then on top of that, giving your time and knowledge to help the Jamaat in their own career exploration and guidance. So, we're so proud, we're so lucky to have you. Thank you to our audience for joining in. Your enthusiasm, your questions, very, very much appreciated and helps us with our programming going forward. This is one of many webinars that we host in hopes of opening the Jamaat's horizon, I guess, to different career pathways and even different career pathways under a certain industry. We hope that today's session has been valuable. This will be posted on the II Canada website shortly so that you can view it back and share it. And as shown on the screen, your feedback is very valuable. So any suggestions, any feedback that you have, please do fill out the survey that you will get. We look at them and we really base our programming off of them. So it means a lot to us. I realized that there were a couple of very specific questions that I will send off to our panelists, and those will get answered as well by email. Thank you everyone for tonight, and hopefully everybody has a great evening and a great night. Thanks, and Yali Madad.